All right. Good evening. Thank you very much for everybody who's listening in and viewing this presentation. My name is Grant White with Endeavour Wealth Management, and tonight we're going to be going through and talking about the future of senior care. Now, this is a topic of, I think, really great interest right now in our country, given the pandemic and the impacts it has had on so many of our friends and our family members. So I want to really thank you all for joining us, and I'm particularly excited to be doing this webinar with my good friends from Realcare, including Adam Napon, Elba Haid, and Lara Secord Haid. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves in a few seconds here, but we've been speaking with this great team at Realcare for a number of months now, and I'm really happy to be partnering with them on these new initiatives. Well, new initiatives for us, but really they've been doing it for this great work for some time. So I'm really excited about working with them because I think that they not only provide a great service for their clients, but beyond that, this is such an underserved area of advice for families. And at Endeavour, it's our mission to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to choose the life they want to live. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is we're going to start by just acknowledging that we feel that there's a new reality for many people as their plans for their own care and that of their family members may have changed from the pandemic. And after that, I'm going to pass things over to Elba, Adam, and Lara to talk about the options that everyone should be considering and how to make an educated decision in this area. Finally, I'm going to close things off by talking about what you need to do financially to prepare and plan and ensure you have the options you would like to have in the future. So let's talk about the new reality that we're facing. How do we get here? Well, the pandemic has brought many changes to our communities today, not the least of which has been the impact being felt by Canadian seniors. Now, given that people over the age of 55, 60 years old have been determined to be at higher risk related to the virus, many of us were already concerned about our elder family members and in our community as well. On top of that, over the last number of decades, our solution to senior care has been to encourage and move our elders into senior care homes or assisted living, which is now being challenged given what has transpired. And one only needs to look at the headlines in the media to see what we may need to reconsider some of our plans for the future. Now, frankly, I'm not showing the more recent headlines coming out of some of Ontario's senior care homes. As of the time of recording this, there's been a lot of news about this in the last few days, which I'm sure most of you are aware of. And I know Adam and Elba and Lara, you're probably going to talk a little bit about this as well, but I think it's clear that there's a lot of disturbing news out there right now, and people should be considering their options. Now, as I said, in any case, there is a new reality, and that what we thought was a good decision for our family members and for ourselves may not be as appealing as it once was. So I would just add to that by saying that the options we are going to discuss this evening are not necessarily new options, but were maybe less known. And I think if there's a positive we can take from the current environment that we're in is that more people should be considering those options available to them. And I would go further to say that they need to consider these options so that everyone can make an educated decision that suits their family best. And after all, this is all about living longer and happier lives. And it's about our family members. And so with that, I'm so happy to have the opportunity to work with the great people of Realcare. And I'm happy to pass this over to them now to talk a little bit more about what they do.
Thank you so much, Grant. We're very delighted to be here and to be sharing some information with you and with your clients about Realcare, about the services that we provide, and about some of the things that we should be planning into the future for in regards to home care. So let me introduce first Elba Haid, President and CEO of Realcare. Elba started this company 25 years ago to provide health care at a professional level with care and compassion. She has over 100 staff. She services several areas in the healthcare system. And Elba is involved in several social causes, including the Heart and Stroke Foundation's Women's Campaign, Arts and Culture in Manitoba, and Sensitive Citizens of the Community. We have Adam Napon, Partner and Business Development at Realcare. He started in human resources in 2008. He's focused on biz development, client and employee engagement, strategic planning. He is a graduate of the Asper School of Business, Leadership and Organizations, and IED. He is an emerging leader. He has received an Emerging Leader Award and is a founding researcher for Overdue Diligence Project. Say that 10 times fast. My name is Lara Secord-Haight. I am a partner and I run marketing for Realcare. Just to give you an idea, I grew up around this company, as Elba Haight is my mother. I designed the original logo for Realcare and I designed the new one. I grew up in and around this organization. I've been managing the branding and online content. My education has been in music. I graduated from the New England Conservatory and the Juilliard School. I'm a professional opera singer as well. And so that is a little bit about our team. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so home care in Manitoba. I want to ask Elba Haight, our founder, when you began this company 25 years ago, where were we with healthcare in Manitoba? What was the landscape like?
Well, there was a lot of home care delivered by the province of Manitoba at that time. They would go into individuals' home and provide a service, but there was also a great need for private companies to go in and also deliver the service. WeCare had set up their facility in Brandon initially, and then they went national. Medox was right across the nation, but huge in the Winnipeg market. So Medox would have been seen as the level of care that I would have seen as my competition when I set up 25 years ago. It looked like it was one of the fastest growing industries in North America at the time.
Wow. So where would you say we are now with healthcare in Manitoba?
I would say that with the baby boomers aging and individuals living so much longer, many well into their 80s, 90s, 100, that there is an immense need to provide services for people to be able to stay in their homes, whatever they consider their home to be, whether it be in a condo or the family home that they raise their children in. There is just a huge, huge demand.
Okay. And where would you say we are going with healthcare in Manitoba? What's the vision that you would like to follow through with?
The vision that I would like to follow through with would be that individuals can make decisions that are going to be best for them as they age in place. Mm-hmm. And that they are given compassionate care, but also that they are dealt with dignity and respect. Those are two of the key founding words of my organization, is to provide care and to maintain individuals with dignity and respect.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. All right, about us. Realcare is a primary pioneer in home and institutional healthcare services in Winnipeg, providing nurses, aides, and companions. Established in 1996 with the aim of providing home care with dignity, comfort, compassion, integrity, and trust. Since then, Realcare has earned its reputation by building solid relationships with client, staff, and the healthcare industry at large. At Realcare, our aim is to continue to provide the very best in healthcare services. Can I have the next slide, please?
Sure.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, we have purpose behind our actions here at Realcare. On the right, you're seeing a photo of the masks, the PPE that we had to improvise. We had masks sewn up by some entrepreneurs in Winnipeg for us so that we could distribute them along with hand sanitizer and gloves to all of our staff, because as you know, as everyone heard, there were shortages of such things in the facilities. And so we wanted to make sure that our frontline staff had everything that they needed. Some of the other social impact projects that Realcare is involved with are the Heart and Stroke Foundation and the St. Boniface Foundation, the Federal Database of Healthcare Professionals, Manitoba Métis Federation, Maui Wichi Itata Center, Manitoba Made Masks, as you see on the right here. We've been involved with taking used iPads or other tablets as donations for elderly people who were in solitary situations during this crisis. We have 2 scholarships for our exemplary staff, the Rose Hayde Memorial Scholarship, as well as the Jonah Nippon Memorial Fund. And you can learn more about those on our website. All right, thank you so much. Adam, I'm gonna hand it back to you.
Thank you. And yeah, sir, just to clarify a bit, the Rose Hayde Fund, that was actually established as a scholarship for, I believe, a nursing student, correct?
Yes. Larry's grandmother, Rose Hayde, had graduated from Mount Sinai in Chicago with the gold medal in nursing in 1932. And we established that in her honor and her name.
Great. And actually the Jonah Nippon Memorial Fund is actually, it's a fund that actually provides programming for children and works with those with special needs. So it's a little bit outside of what we do, but you know, an example of what's happening with our social impact work. But I'm gonna transition a little bit. I'm gonna get into some of the meat and potatoes where we talk about the type of living situations that could be expected with senior living. So there's many different phases as we go. You know, Elba described that it can start sometimes within 60s, 70s, and we're living the 80s, 90s, and 100s. So when we look at one of the first types of the privately funded, where this would be, living situations that would be expected at like paying rent or renting an apartment. As an adult, active adult community, one of the independent living communities, assisted living. And then as you would go through that list, you see the Alzheimer's dementia community living. It gets a little bit more hands-on. The first one that is living within the family home, that would be your most cost benefits, your family member moving in with someone who's willing to be a primary caregiver and take on that responsibility. And then as you go and you look over to what the provincially funded side, and this is where basically every Manitoba citizen has a right to these services here as citizens of Manitoba. And when we look at some of the headlines that Grant highlighted in the beginning, this is where we're seeing the headlines coming out of, which is the long-term care facilities that are provincially managed. So they are provincially managed and funded, but as well, we do see them privately run. So, they're all funded by the Regional Health Authority, and they're also known as, a nursing home or a personal care home, but there's a mix. Some of them are run by the municipality, some by the provinces, others are nonprofit or charitable organizations running the elder care facilities. But then really where we've seen some of the headlines coming out of is the privately managed personal care homes, which are on contract base with the provincial health authority. And all of this, all the basically healthcare programs are mandated provincially. So with the long-term care facilities, though, since it is publicly managed, you don't see a lot of the amenities that you would in the privately funded, such as libraries, pools, exercise rooms. That's what you get when you look at some of the independent and assisted living communities, but you don't see that in the long-term care facilities. So, with public funding comes, I guess, lesser amenities or lesser options, which is why we're starting to talk about the importance of planning if you're wanting to age in home or go towards more of an assisted living or independent living type of situation. But the one thing is that the home care is available for all these situations, whether you're in a personal care home and one of the privately funded. And I guess to highlight, again, the highlights to clarify what we're seeing in the facilities, or what we will be seeing reported, is when you're in a facility, it's basically numbers. They track everything down to a number and how many hours of care each resident is allocated. And they really don't take into account that individual person. It's all averages. So if they say we're going to allocate, which in Manitoba it's recommended, there's nothing mandated as well. These are all recommendations, and there's very little regulation of it as well. So in Manitoba, the recommendation is 3.4, which you're seeing, or 3.6 hours per individual. And what that means is they're going to allocate 3.6 hours in a 24-hour period for each individual, or for each individual resident. And then they base their staffing on that, on basically these averages, without taking into account everyone's individual needs. So I mentioned, 3.6 is what's being recommended in Manitoba. We have advocate groups that are saying it needs to be at least 4.1 hours, and we should probably be at 4.9 hours of care per individual. What's being reported in Ontario is levels that are along the lines more of 1.9 hours of care in a 24-hour period. And this is where we're seeing staffing levels way below what is required to provide proper care. And that's really, I think, what we're seeing here, is how the privately managed facilities are short-staffed and aren't backfilling that. And that's where we see the lack of care and the negligence, and basically just not sufficient care for the elders that are in there. And then there's the backlash too from those organizations. So we're looking to clear that up, and we're going to see some major changes as we're seeing the news develop. It's things will be different. And basically we're going to talk about the different types of care that you could be expecting with home care. Privately funded, you can get access to companions or homemakers or home support workers, which would be at our entry level. And then as you work with a regional health authority or a private agency with more hands-on care or medical level care, you're going to see a healthcare aide as our entry level. And really that helps with mobility, medication reminders, using any medical lifts that are necessary, but still they're not practitioners. They can't administer any drugs or anything like that. And that's where we step up to an LPN, or a licensed practical nurse, and a registered nurse. And this goes from a mix from 24 hours a day coverage for some individuals to ones that are working maybe with the healthcare funding that get a few hours a week, or a few hours a day type of situation. And there's a huge variance in that. And that all changes with stages in life. And this is why the planning needs to happen for individual comfort level. And when we look at funding, so again, I said as a citizen of Manitoba, you are entitled to certain amounts of funding. CPP, retirement pensions are very popular ones. Veterans Affairs would be available to anyone who would serve for this country. And then there's a whole onslaught that you should definitely be talking with your personal accountant and your wealth manager to see what is available and how to work that into your strategy. So we've looked at we mentioned the regional health authorities and home care agencies. So they work independently, but we also work collaboratively with them. And I pulled from a website, Manitoba does have one of the longest standing and most comprehensive programs in the country. So we should feel very fortunate to be living in Manitoba with what they're offering, but it's still not enough from what we're seeing happening. There's still the shortcomings. So we're working with industry partners and with government to push for increased funding for all levels of home care, and to have more thorough assessments and individual assessments, so it is patient focused. So when looking with the public managed care, that's very much politically driven. That's going to change as our powers in government change by the budget set and the focus that they're putting in it. So when we are going to the elections, see what platform they're running on. If elder or senior care is not within that, there's some holes. This should be the focus after what we're seeing during this COVID-19. So with the public managed care system, it's publicly funded, so that makes it accessible to everyone. But when you're working on the home care side, there's very explicit duties that are outlined. There's a lot of restrictions via the union and who can come in. You'll see a different face potentially every time. And I highlighted before, it's very much numbers focused. They're not looking at individuals. They look at, you know, how many hours and the cost, and it's all this huge system. So you kind of get lost in it, and there's very limited options. They kind of present, this is what our plan is, and are you on board? And if not on board to stay in home, you'll be living in a personal care home, or you'll have to find alternate living arrangements because they've maybe deemed it's not safe to be there. One option you do have, if you do meet a minimum amount of care, is to do the self or family managed care. So that is publicly funded, but that allows you the freedom to choose an agency to work with, someone who can maybe more customize your needs. And that can be a mix of using that funding, which can go up to, I believe, Elva, $60,000 a year, potentially, if it's full need. So as much as $60,000 a year of insurable healthcare to remain in home, and then you could also supplement that on if you want to do more thorough services. If not, you would use that funding to come to an agency and say, you know, these are our needs, and basically we would meet and come up with a completely customizable care plan. And while an agency staff member is in there, there's not as many restrictions to their duties. So it can be something as simple as throwing a load of laundry in, maybe doing some dishes, you know, some house chores, going for walks. They have the freedom to basically do whatever to be a companion and not offer the proper care without having to follow a list of duties, or if it's outside of that, they can't because it's publicly funded. So again, it's patient focused, and there's really endless options on just setting up your care plan. And that's what is really the highlight is the options with this, and not that you're just given a option to follow through with. So now we've, you know, highlighted kind of the hybrid system that we work with an agency. You know, specifically ours, you know, 25-year experience, you get a lot more than a meeting with a health authority. We're going to come up with strategies to basically help you remain in home. They're all patient focused, working with your family, not only to care for the individual in need, but to also act as advocacy to help navigate this healthcare system that is, from our experience, what we're hearing is just too complex. And that's another thing we're going to be pushing with the meetings with government, is to how do we simplify the self and family managed care, because it's being recognized that home care should be the tip of the spear when looking at healthcare in general. People aging at home are proven to just to be more healthy and to heal more quickly after post surgeries and that, because of reduced stress, the mind, body, and soul, and the holistic aspect that we'll talk about later. So with navigating, you know, that system, you'll get more consistent staff. You're going to have direct access to our office. You won't be calling a government system and put through a call center and talk with someone who might not be able to help. If there's an issue, you're going straight. You get straight to the top with answers from all of our leadership and management at the organization, and just adaptable. And again, being able to offer services that are potentially outside of the direct healthcare, and just anything to make the life easier of your family, such as grocery shopping. Take care of anything. Literally, you bring it to us and we'll either do it ourselves or put you in contact with someone who can. So again, you know, the key takeaway is that, you know, you do have options. The first step with exploring home care funding would be have a meeting with the regional health authority. Contact an agency prior to. They should be willing to help guide you through that process before signing you on as a client. Really, they're here as advocates first and foremost, and providing information to the regional health authority. And then if you choose to go to the route of an agency, we're here as well. So one thing you don't want to get caught up in with not planning is having to make mandatory decisions when a health crisis occurs. So when health emergency happen without a plan in place, there's a multitude of things and decisions that have to be made within a very short period of time, especially if it's emergency based, such as a fall and the individual is not deemed safe enough to live at home. That happened to my grandmother, and there was a fall and she had to go into a personal care home. So this could lead to a myriad of possible disagreements. You know, planning ahead can help to alleviate some of the stress for the family members and friends. So sharing this health plan with your loved ones can be both difficult and comfortable, but it doesn't have to be. There's challenges, but in conversations that they need to be had to best ensure that the wishes are carried out for the individual who's receiving the care. So a couple of things, to help with this is, you need to have an open conversation. It's better to discuss the difficult decisions rather than relying on your loved ones to make assumptions about what your wishes are for your healthcare plan, and which can be full of emotions when you do have someone in distress. So when discussing your wishes, it should be honest, forthcoming, offer thoughtful explanations about the decisions you made and why you're going the route that you want. So the people who are helping implement this plan know why they're doing it. Another thing that you could help with the planning or during this is, if needed, to assign a doer. Someone that takes on the important duties required, and a lot of time and effort. Along with the ability to make intelligent and sometimes difficult decisions. So you want to choose someone for that who you trust and is comfortable communicating with your loved ones and will make the decisions objectively rather than subjectively when we get into emotional situations. So again, proactive decision making instead of reactive. Emotions are in there. Timelines are short when it's an emergency rather than planning months or years in advance. The stress could be increase even more undue health issues. And then the family dynamics, you don't want to fracture that either. So, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Elba. After 25 years experience, she's seen everything and knows basically exactly where to start and what you should be looking for when planning your healthcare strategy, from the healthcare plan to the financial planning as well. So Elba, I'll let you speak on a few things that you feel are some of the most important.
Thank you, Adam. There are a couple areas that I feel definitely have to be covered. And the first one would be in choosing powers of attorneys. And I'm suggesting that you not just have one, that you end up with 2 or possibly 3, and make sure that there is an age gap between them. Because if you are living into your 80s, 90s, or 100, that could mean that your children, if you've had children and you're depending on them to make your decisions, they could end up being in their 60s or 70s. They could end up with their own health issues, with dementia, any number of things. So it is, from my perspective, essential that you choose your power of attorneys well, and that you end up choosing them with an age gap. The second one would be your healthcare director. You should have that form filled out and an individual named as to, if you become incapacitated, that this individual can make the decision. So you've got to discuss with them, ask them if they are prepared to take on that role, and then discuss with them what your choices are in the event that you in the event that you had a stroke, for instance, and you completely you were completely incapacitated. You should be able to have advised that person ahead of time as to what you would like to see for the rest of your life. So those are the 2 areas that I think are key to cover.
Right, and I know at the office we hear a lot about the holistic approach to health and your healthcare plan.
But that is something that should be starting when you are younger, but it's never ever too late to make sure that you have the proper diet. You surround yourself with individuals socially, you have companionship, you should be getting in touch with a holistic doctor. Many medical doctors do not have any information about nutrition and vitamins and diet. So I think it would be an avenue that could open up for you to see a holistic doctor.
Great. And I think, the key takeaways, and we keep mentioning it, is having options. And that you do have options, but the options can become really limited if you're not prepared, and planning procedurally, emotionally preparing yourself, and financially. This, depending on what level of care you are wanting for yourself and what kind of options you want available, that needs to be planned financially decades in advance so that you know that you're ready for it. And that's where really Grant is going to kind of take over here and give us the conversation on the financial planning aspect of it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam, Elba, and Lara. It's I think that's such a just such a really great talk, and really, as I said before, it's one of those topics that's just really underserved, in my opinion, and just one of those areas where there's not a lot of advice being given. So we really want to thank you guys for that. I think that you really hit on a few really key points as well, like as it relates to the powers of attorney, healthcare directives. We talk a lot about estate planning with our clients, and people often go to just focusing on the wills. But so often powers of attorney or healthcare directives are probably more important documents because they affect you while you're still alive. And so I think that you want to be really making sure that things that are important to you while you're alive are being taken care of as well. So I think that was really great, and really highlighted the options, or having options, which is so important. So thanks so much for that. So now we've presented more about what those options are. Let's talk about how we plan financially for those options. And planning is so important because if you want to ensure that you're able to have the best plan possible, the most ideal plan for you and your family, then the only way to ensure it will be a reality is through planning. Benjamin Franklin said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And really that holds true for financial planning as well. The solutions today come so much easier than trying to make things work tomorrow. I mean, if you wait 10, 20 years from now to try to make it work, and Adam, you were kind of touching on this, it becomes so much more difficult to do. So I'm just going to touch a little bit on how we do that planning work at Endeavour Wealth. And what is often overlooked is it likely the most important step in planning is to understand your goals, understanding what is important to you. And too many assumptions, or too often assumptions, are being made for people on what they want to do. And so we've developed a process around this. We call it our smart money planning process, which is designed to ensure that your money and your plan is working for what is important to you. I can't tell you how many times I see people come in and they've got plans that have been developed, and it's based on these traditional financial planning rules. But as we've been talking about tonight, traditional planning around goals is not covering all the things that we think people should be considering. And I think the offering from Realcare is a prime example of that, because not enough people are talking about what's life going to be like in your 80s and 90s, and how do you need to, or how do you want to live that life, and then what options are available to you. So really our process starts mainly with discovery, and this is one of the biggest things we do. Is we sit down with every one of our clients. We usually sit down for at least an hour and a half at the beginning, just to determine really what's important to you and finding out who's important to you and what the future ultimately looks like. Part of this process, or once we're done that process, is actually getting into a collaboration phase. And so I'm just going to jump ahead a slide here, but getting into a collaboration phase, where this is where we would sit down with all the different specialists in our group that would be required to provide what we call this true wealth management process. And part of this would be sitting down and talking to the team at Realcare and determining whether or not they feel that there's some opportunities to be working with you and your client and our clients to ensure that they have the best care possible going forward, or at least the best plan possible going forward for their care. Now, once we've done that and we've sat down with everybody, that's where we quarterback and bring in the entire plan together. We take all the advice that's been provided from our specialist teams, and we get into the implementation phase. So we sit down with your client, you as a client again. We present to you, based on here's where you are today, here's where you want to be in the future, and here's how we plan to get you there. Make sure that you're comfortable with everything. Make sure you understand everything that we want to do. And once you're comfortable and agree to everything that we recommend, then we can move forward and we start implementing that plan. At that point, we generally will be introducing you to the different specialists that we would be working with or that would be required to ensure that your plan is successful. After that, it's all about relationships, and it is in many businesses, as I know is in Realcare, and then this is likewise at Endeavour Wealth with wealth management. And the relationship is so important. I always say, like, when it comes to financial planning or planning in general, it's never just a one-time event. It's always a process that's ongoing throughout our lives. And so we practice a lot of regular communication. You can see the communication lines orbiting around our whole process here. Because we really feel that the only way to develop good, strong relationships is to have regular communication, regular face-to-face meetings. Right now, they're regular video face-to-face meetings, but regular face-to-face meetings, regular phone calls, regular emails, regular presentations, all of those things to build that long-term relationship. And I'm proud to say that, my family's been doing this business for over 35 years now, and we're dealing with third-generation clients now, which I'm proud of that because that means we're doing a good job of building those long-term relationships, and we look to do that with every client that we work with. Now, I'm just going to go back to this slide because we get a lot of questions around what is wealth management, and so I'm going to take a step back from what I've been saying here because I think this is a really great question, and frankly, my industry has it's been a bit of a black box in terms of what professionals provide, what services, and who manages what, and who's allowed to manage what. So, to begin with, at Endeavour Wealth Management, we're a fiduciary. We're fiduciary advisors, meaning that we have a fiduciary duty, a legal obligation to provide advice that is in the best interest of our clients. Now, this puts us on the same level of professionalism as lawyers, accountants, and doctors. And now, what may be surprising to many, and I know this is surprising to me every time I see it, but most financial advisors and planners don't have this fiduciary responsibility. And in fact, only about 25% of Canadian advisors have this obligation. So in my opinion, true wealth managers need to have that level of professionalism. We need to be on the same level as the most respected professionals in the industry or in society. So now, the second aspect of delivering wealth management, in my opinion, is delivering that specialized advice. And we've been talking about that and how Realcare works with our clients. But for all aspects of your financial needs, going beyond just investments as well. So what you can see here on this slide is that is the Endeavour Wealth Management Specialist Team, which is made up of dedicated financial planners, tax advisors, lawyers, banking specialists, portfolio managers, and many, many more. Some of these people are internal, as in they work directly in our office, but some of them are external, like our friends at Realcare, who would recommend to our clients. Now, the real value in this is delivering a coordinated and efficient plan for managing our clients' wealth, and then, of course, execution of that plan. When all the puzzle pieces are working together, it is not only saves our clients a lot of money, but it saves time, and it also creates a much better experience overall, which is ultimately what we're trying to do. So getting back to our topic for this presentation, what needs to be done in order to ensure that you have the opportunity to choose the best option is that we need to develop a plan. Adam mentioned this many, many times, and we're really harping on it because it's so important. So as we go through our smart money planning process, we develop a plan for all of our clients' goals and dreams, and part of that is projecting out every single year, quite literally for the rest of our clients' lives, which is what we can see here on this slide. So this is a snapshot of actually one of our clients' actual plans. And what you can see here is that we have included their objective of spending more money in their later years for services that an organization like Realcare can provide for them. After discussing what they wanted to do for themselves, they decided that they wanted to stay in their home as long as they could. And they felt that that would help them to live much happier, and we know will likely mean that they'll live longer as well, as Adam and Elba were talking about. So you can see in that chart that right around the year 2032, we've started to plan for in-home care needs, which is why you see an income increase, and that continues for the rest of their lives. And we're carrying our plans out to age 99. In this case, we customize this to the individual, but Elba, Adam, Laura, and I were talking about this before we started recording. Is that too often plans are not going out far enough, and for a lot of reasons. But the reality is, people are living longer. They're living more actively, or hopefully they're living more actively and doing more things. And we want to make sure that they can live the life they want to well into their 90s, because that's the reality of that people are living well into their 90s now. Now, in this case, our client had the assets to plan for this need, but we know that's not necessarily the case for everyone. And as we were discussing before we start recording, we know that there's going to be a big strain on a lot of these assets going forward as people are living longer, and it's something that we have real concerns about. But the good news is that there are other options for funding, which will not only will not put nearly as big of a strain on your cash flow or on your assets, and so we're happy to chat about those briefly right now as well. So when it comes to funding long-term care, we're going to high level it here, but there's really two options that that we think you should consider. One, you can fund it out of savings, like I showed in my client example there, and they were fortunate enough that they can fund it out of their own savings, their retirement plan. But for many people, that's not going to be the option that's available to them, unfortunately. And so there are other options in funding from insurance. And it's a little known fact that there are great insurance solutions that can help people out in these areas. Now, different types of insurance for different times of your lives, and that's what this slide is highlighting here. Earlier on in people's lives, different types of insurance might be more valuable, like life insurance, for example. You're protecting for catastrophic loss of income. You're protecting against debts that your family might have to pay for. Things like long-term disability are more important. Even critical illness insurance, again, protecting from lost income if you were to incur one of the covered illnesses. Now, I know that insurance can be a dirty word for many, but with what we're talking about tonight, this type of insurance is one that will actually benefit you directly. And the good news is, unlike life insurance, you don't need to go through the unfortunate event of dying to receive the benefit of some of these types of insurance. So long-term care insurance in particular is something that I think is going to be incredibly valuable to people going forward. It's incredibly underserved in our industry, in our society, but it's something that I think is going to be very important and is definitely worth looking at today. So how long-term care insurance works and why it might be appealing for even for people who have assets to pay for these services, is that you may be able to get the benefits for pennies on the dollar of what it would have cost your savings. And so it can really fill in the gaps of programs where other programs might fall short, like what some of the programs that Adam was discussing earlier, some government funded programs. But it also has the additional benefits of it's going to protect your assets from depletion, which maybe you want those assets earmarked for your heirs. Maybe you want to keep those assets in your family. So this is an option to protect those assets. But this can also be a very tax efficient way of paying for these services. And in that you're not drawing from maybe registered money like RRSP plans or RIFs, lifts, things like that. And so you're really protecting those tax dollars and allowing them to grow more by using an insurance policy which is paying you out tax free. So let me just illustrate this with an example. So let's say we have a couple, Joe and Jane in this case, and they own an auto repair business, and Jane is a dentist. So as a family, their income is approximately $200,000 per year. They have two kids, a son's 11 and a daughter who's 8. Joe and Jane are primarily concerned about protecting their family in the event of one of them was to incur an injury or an illness, and that could devastate their family's financial situation. Now, additionally, with the recent news about senior care homes, they want to ensure that they can stay in their home as long as possible and not burden their children. And I think that's something that we're seeing more regularly, more recently, really, because of what's going on in the world, that people are considering more of these options. So let me give you an example of a solution that ultimately we presented to these clients. The initial solution when they were younger is critical illness insurance. Now, critical illness insurance, if you're not familiar with it, will typically protect you in the case of 20 plus events. Now, it depends on the type of insurance policy. It depends on the company who's offering it. We want to make sure that the policy for you would be covering what's of concern to you. And then generally speaking, that means covering as many of the illnesses or injuries that's as many of them as possible. But here's just a few examples of some of the things that critical illness will protect you from. And a lot of people think it's just, oh, this is only about cancer or MS. Yes, those are covered by this. But it also covers things like benign brain tumor, coronary artery bypass surgery, deafness, dementia, kidney failure, loss of limb, paralysis, think about getting in an accident, things like that. So there's a lot of other things that this will cover. And frankly, the benefit that you have of something like this program for critical illness versus a disability plan is that it's going to give you a lump sum of cash upfront so that you can pay for some of your maybe medical costs. You can really use the money for whatever you want, but most people would use them for medical costs or even taking a vacation with their family. You can do lots of things. We've seen a number of those things. So getting back to our example, for $100,000 of coverage for each Joe and Jane, the coverage would look something like this. So they're both 40 years old, both non-smokers. $100,000 of coverage for Joe. His coverage will cost him $134.18 per month, or approximately this. And for Jane, we're looking at about $122.48 per month. Again, the pricing will vary depending on the individual companies. It'll depend on the individual health of the clients. But this will give you at least a little bit of a picture of how this works. Now, if you remember back to my example, one of the things that they were also concerned about was what happens when they're needing more assistance in their life with their health later on in life. So not only will this critical illness insurance policy cover them for the immediate needs while they're younger and their family's still young, but this policy could also pay out $1,000 a month if the client becomes eligible for a living care benefit. So this can convert into what we call long-term care insurance, which would go towards paying for services like that, which Realcare would offer, or other programs like that to help offset or benefit what the provincial benefits would be. And those benefits on the long-term care side would pay out to age 100. So again, this would be the likelihood of claiming on this would be highly likely in this case. Now, the question is then, do I need to get critical illness insurance to get long-term care? No, you don't need to. In fact, you can go directly to long-term care insurance. And so what I did was I took that same client, Joe and Jane, and I aged them forward 10 years, just to give a little bit of a different example here. But if they're 50 years old and they want $1,000 per month of long-term care coverage, they can certainly do so. And the cost of that will roughly run about $56 a month for males at this age, and roughly about $78 a month for women at this age. Okay. Again, that all depends on the company, and the benefit will pay out. This benefit will pay indefinitely and is indexed for inflation. So the good news on this is that if you have this type of coverage, when you start collecting on it, you will have this benefit for the rest of your lives. Now, how do you qualify for the benefits? That's a big part of long-term care. Now, there are really 3 ways to qualify to receive long-term care insurance benefits. The benefits are paid if you reside in Canada. You actually, as well as in the United States, you may travel outside these countries for a maximum of 8 weeks at a time and continue to receive benefits. So you can still travel and receive these benefits. But in order to qualify for the benefits, you must require one of the following. So constant supervision by another person because of deteriorated mental ability. So you're considered to have deteriorated mental ability if you need continual supervision by another person for protection from threats to your physical health, or you have short or long-term memory issues, orientation issues, lapse of judgment, things like that. If you have substantial physical assistance or you require substantial physical assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living. So these activities could be anything from bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, means moving in or out of your bed, chair or wheelchair with or without the aid of assistance. Continence means the ability to control both bladder and bowel functions. If you have trouble feeding yourself, if you if you need an assisted device, or things like aids, if you're using an assisted device, allows you to perform an activity of daily living safely and completely. If you have 2 of those things or need of 2 of those things for daily living, then you will qualify for this. And the last one would be standby assistance. So standby assistance to perform the daily activities of bathing and transferring. Those 2 are really big. And so standby assistance means that another person must always be within arm's reach so you can safely and completely perform the activities of bathing and transferring. So those are typically the ways that you would qualify for this type of benefit. And again, as we're talking about people's needs as they get older, it's my experience has been that there's really been not a lot of issues as people start to see these types of troubles in their life. This insurance can come in really, really handy and in getting you the care that you need. So We've covered a lot of material in this presentation, and going back to my introduction, I know that most people are unaware of the options they have available to them, and so I'd really encourage you to simply explore your options. Elba, Lara, and Adam are more than happy to have consultations and talk to people, explore the options and what makes the most sense. And you know what makes me most comfortable in working with them is that if they're not the best option, and I've experienced this, that they're not afraid to tell you that they're not the best option, and they'll put you in the right direction. Now, this is something I look for in actually all of the relationships I work with. And so I would strongly encourage everyone listening and watching to have a conversation with them or reach out to ourselves so that we can get the full picture on what your options are and for your family members. Now, this is one of the most, I'd say one of the most stressful decisions you can make, especially when it comes to your family. I've seen this. Adam talked a little bit about his family's situation. I can see it in my own family. I have two grandmothers who are both 94 years old, and this has become a topic of interest, let's say, over the last year, especially. And so, you know, make sure that you have all the information you need to make the right decision. After that, myself or one of our other advisors at our advisor teams at Endeavour would be happy to ensure that financially you're prepared and have a certainty about the future. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, you know, either to ourselves at endeavourwealth.ca. You can email us at info@endeavourwealth.ca, or by all means phone us, or certainly reach out to the team at Realcare, realcare.ca, or reception@realcare.ca is their email, or by phone as well. They're more than happy to speak with you and have a conversation. So with that, I would just want to thank everyone for joining us on this presentation. It's been wonderful speaking with you. And I don't know if the team at Realcare, if you have anything else you'd like to add to the end of this?
Just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and really see that now that, you know, the wealth managers and financial planners are putting a focus on this, because it was very overlooked. And from what we've seen, it hasn't been given the focus that it needs to. And with everything developing the way it is, you know, now is the time. I think people are going to wake up. The curtain has dropped, and we see where the gaps are, and you need to prepare in order to have options in order to fill those gaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I look forward to doing this again soon.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.